free to ask questions as we go along here. So just a little bit on the interface. When you log into the system, you're going to see vehicles on the right-hand side, and as you click your vehicles, it zooms to the map and shows you that vehicle, the associated vehicle that you select. Your historic tracks and track information is down in the lower right, so you can get to your linear tracks and your breadcrumbs down below. Up in the upper left, you have your reports and various menus. So the reports, again, are tied to some of the events that we're going to work on. You have a map toolbar for interacting with the map itself. And then down in the lower left, one of the key things we're going to be talking about today are the events. And so down below on the left, there's tabs. There's an events tab and the geofence tab. And there's also views, so you can set up views for your individual vehicles. So you can group them by, say, department or by vehicle type, such as street sweepers versus snowplows versus utility vehicles, et cetera. All right, so we'll just jump in here and provide an overview of the events and alarms specifically here. So essentially what event rules are is identifying anything that's happening in LEGO. So whether it be broom down or whether it be a speeding or all of those different things that are going on with a vehicle or drivers can be captured. And you have to have event rules to essentially identify those. And you have different options for how this information is displayed or delivered to you. So you can visually see these things based on event rules or not on the map. You can see these in reports. You can see these in email notifications. So there's a variety of things that can be triggered and sent to you based on what's going on with the vehicle. But you have to have these event rules in order to capture this information. So this is a key thing with LEGO is these event rules. So we have a lot of out-of-the-box events that are available that come as pre-built events, things such as idling and speeding and harsh driving. The harsh driving is typically there's 4 components to that. It's right cornering, left cornering, acceleration, braking, all based on rules and those can be configured based on your preferences. There's geofence events, so both inside and outside geofence sort of events, boundaries. Essentially, if a vehicle leaves a boundary or goes into a boundary, you can send notifications and or capture the time spent in those areas. Trips. So these are events that identify every trip that a vehicle takes, so that the miles and so forth that the vehicle's driving. And then some of the others are stops. So you can capture at stop locations. These can be known stops, which known stops are where you can import in your known stops, whether they be fuel stations or city buildings or other types of things that you want to know when a vehicle has arrived and how much time they're spending there when they depart are based on these known stops. And so you can, in your reports, you can see the name and how long they spend there. Unknown are essentially where a vehicle is stopping, but you don't have a designated either a point of interest or a geofence that identifies what it is. So, but it will, in the reports, it'll at least capture the address of where they stopped and the whole time they spent there. So,
can I ask you a question?
Yes.
How does it track that a vehicle is idling?
So there's there's two types of idling. There's idling when the vehicle is stopped and the ignition is on. So that's an idling. Basically ignition on, but it's not moving. And we have it has the ability to configure that when that triggers. So our default is 2 minutes. So it doesn't actually, the event doesn't actually trigger until the vehicle has been idling with engine on for 2 minutes. Then it triggers. But we have others that are 5 minutes. So we can change that delay, so to speak, based on your requirement. Because the 2 minute thing is what we're trying to do is eliminate where vehicles, say, pull up to a stop sign or a stoplight, and all those sort of times where they're just pulling up again to a stop sign, but not necessarily idling.
Sure. Yeah, I understand.
But the other idle is also just not necessarily the engine's on, but the vehicle is not moving. So we also can capture that all the time that the vehicle is not moving as well. So that's, for example, used in our utilization report. So it's helpful to know, say, the monthly utilization of your fleet, and it gives you things such as days in use and those sort of reporting. So there's sort of two different types of idling: vehicle not moving with ignition on, or vehicle just not moving.
And those have to be configured?
Those are both set up. They're both set up in the system as default events, but we can configure them to be based on your rules for when they trigger. So in other words, if you want 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes till it actually triggers, we can configure that. So along with these events, you can configure what are called alarms. And alarms are things to essentially notify you of when it occurs, and this can be on the map visually. These visual representations show things such as speeding or idling and have an icon on the map. And those are set up in the event rules themselves to if you want a label for those or a specific icon to show on the map. You can define if it closes after the event stops automatically, these sort of alarms go away, or you can keep these alarms permanent on the map until someone goes in and manually closes them. So you have the ability or flexibility to decide how long these alarms stay and when they go, if they automatically go or get closed, or if they stay on there until someone goes in and reviews and then decides they need to be closed. These alarms can be seen in more details on the events down in the events tab. So if you click on the events tab, you can then go down and you can either see live events that are occurring right now, or you can go back in time and pick your time frame. So there's a little calendar here. You can go in and then choose your specific date range. If you notice these colors are associated with each event. So you can change the color that's displayed, and that way you can see visually where those events occurred, and then just drag this green box over those events, and then they show up down below in your list. And you can click on those, and they go to the map for where those are located. So that's just a visual way to go back and look at some of these alarms that are occurring. In those event rules, you can do other things too with these alarms. You can add additional fields or columns down below in this events tab. So this example here, what we did was we added for them the speed at which the vehicle is driving, along with the posted speed. So that way, real quick, when you go down and you pick these alarms that are occurring down below, you can see real quick what the speed and alarm was. The other thing in the events is you can label these alarms to give a visual of what occurred, either maybe the idle time or in this case the speed visually on the icons. There's some flexibility or capability to configure these based on what you're wanting to show on these. So next I'm going to go through and just show you how to create these event rules, and also we can review some existing ones as well. So to get to event rules, you go to your admin drop-down menu, and there's an event rules option here. And when you click that, you'll see a list of existing event rules that are in your system. So again, as I mentioned, there's some default ones that are available, but you also have the ability to create a bunch of other ones based on what you need. So up in the upper right-hand corner of your event rules dialog, there's a Add New Event Rule, and it's essentially a wizard that walks you through the process of creating a new event rule. So I'm going to go into this in a little bit more detail here. So the first thing you do when you're going and creating a new event rule is you put in the name of that event rule and then some sort of a description. So you just name it, put a description so people know what that is. And you can decide whether to enable it or disable it, just basically by yes or no. So if you're initially maybe testing it out, you could just disable it so it's not doing anything until you're ready to, and then once it is ready to go, then you can enable it. So it gives you the ability to turn it on or off. You can decide who that event rule applies to. When I say who, it's typically the vehicles, but it could be other things. It could be drivers. It could be other things. But you check those. Those are considered what are called tags. So as an example here, you may have sweeper vehicles, building vehicles, code enforcement. You can choose what specific these specific rules apply to which vehicles. You can also set this up on a schedule. So the default is that it's always active all the time. So Monday through Sunday, 24 hours. But you could, if you have some rules in your agency that you don't want to track after hours or weekends, you could set it that way, or you could do it the other way where you have the rules set up where you want to know after hours and weekends what the vehicles are doing at that time. So you could set up the rule sort of a reverse of that, of knowing, I want to know what's going on outside of business hours with these vehicles, for example. The key thing with these event rules is your expression. So there's a lot of different expressions. Essentially, expressions are your various things that define what the rule does. So some examples might be geofence expression. So the geofence expression is related to everything that you do with the geofence. And geofences, again, are boundaries. So when you pick that expression, everything you're doing is it brings everything that's associated with geofences in that you can define that rule for. But there's other ones such as job expressions. So if you're starting and finishing jobs, or points of interest specifically. So if you're wanting to do, instead of geofences, points of interest, probably the majority of what our event rules are associated with are these two top ones, which is analog expression and digital expression. So these really have a lot of things that are tied to, for example, the vehicle, engine codes, there's event codes that are going on. Pretty much the majority of things that we're talking about are these two, and we'll go through that in a little bit more detail here. Yeah, just as an example over here on the right, this one is specifically once you pick the geofence expression. This is an example of you pick the specific geofence, and then you can decide whether that is going to be an inside or outside event that's occurring in that expression. So this one over on the right is just an example of I pick this geofence expression, then I can pick my specific geofence boundary that I'm dealing with, and then decide whether it's going to be something that's happening outside or inside that boundary, for example. So the next thing in the wizard is setting up your notifications. So again, there's a lot of different notification types that you can choose from. Some of the typical ones may be an email notification. So this would be where, going back to that geofence boundary example, is you have, for example, maybe the county boundary or state boundary, and you want to be a supervisor to be notified immediately when someone leaves that boundary. Well, you can choose an email notification to automatically send a response to someone that they've left the boundary, for example. Some of the other things here that are key would be report argument. So that's if you can add additional fields onto your report that might be important based on what's going on. So, for example, if you have driver ID technology where you're also tracking the driver, and you want a report that shows in that geofence violation report, I want to know the driver name as well. So you could tie different information into the same report based on adding a report argument, for example. So a lot of different options for notifications, and we can, of course, help you through some of this process if you have specifics for that. So now I'm going to just show you an example of a geofence event rule and how to set that up. So you would basically, in the expression, you pick geofence expression here, and then based on your geofences that you create, whether it be, for example, a route geofence or an area geofence, you pick that in the list, and then it'll drop down, you pick again which is inside or outside of that expression. And this is an example of a geofence that you pick an argument type, and you want to actually display that visually down below in the event tab. You want to have that column show up there so you can have that information available, as well as you want it to actually display on the icon the username and information about the event can be used with this argument notification. In the final step here is setting a presentation, so you can decide whether you want it to be displayed on the map or not. So you can either enable or disable, and then choose the label. And sort of the end result here is over in the lower right. When the vehicle leaves, for example, a boundary, it would show a flashing icon and then also label that location of where the vehicle left the geofence, for example. All of these events can be then also used in your reporting. So one of the key reports that's available in your drop-down menu is called an event report. And this event report rule is that it allows you to run an ad hoc report based on your events that you've set up. So you just pick that, and then you have the option to choose your event. So an example might be, let's just take, you have district boundaries, for example, geofence boundaries that are districts, and you want to know miles swept within those district boundaries. Well, you can use this event rule ad hoc report and pick a broom down event and pick your geofence event, and those two, and then pick your time frame. So, for example, a week or a month, and then run that, and it'll give you all of the broom down events within your geofence boundaries, for example. So it's a nice sort of ad hoc reporting capability that you can run on your events. Here's just a couple that I actually did yesterday for a customer. This was based on the event rule report, and they wanted to know, and I helped them create a geofence. It's called for them it was called a BOC boundary, and they wanted to know when the vehicles were leaving this boundary and the total time that they were spending inside the boundary. And so I'll show you some of that as an example here when we get into this. But you can quickly create your own report based on these event report, and then save it as an actual report going forward if it's something that's going to work for you. So you can sort of create it and then decide if you want it as a permanent report. You can then save it as a permanent report in your drop-down menu. All right, so I'm going to pop over here to the demonstration. So I'm in LEGO, and the first thing I just want to show you is an example of what an event looks like and where to find them. So down here in the lower left-hand corner, we have the event role, and if you notice here, this is showing live. So right now there's currently no events happening at the moment, otherwise they would be showing here down below. But I can go back in time, and probably, I don't know if you can see it, but there's some little pink dots, and those are where an event occurred in the past. So I can simply grab this and drag the green over the event area where that occurred, and then it shows me the event visually on the map once it gets into this area. One of the things that I had done for this customer too is I added a couple new columns on here because they weren't set as default, but this has the speed and the posted speed limit down below here. So real quick, I can see when this started, when it finished, and the duration, which vehicle it is, and some of this other information here down below. So that's just an example of an event and an alarm that's happening. And so if I go up to the event rules, I'll sort of go through and explain what is triggering this. So under this event rule called actual speed limit rule, what this is using actual speed limits for individual road types. So each road has its own posted speed limit that is set, and this is using what's called the speeding event expression. So if you're wanting to do speeding specifically, and it should already be set up in your application already as a default, but it's using what's called the speeding event expression, and it already has predefined things for these in terms of posted speed limits, and you have the ability to set where those get triggered. So in this case, it's 7 miles over the speed limit is where this event gets triggered. But you could set that to certain road types to be 5 miles or 10 miles over the speed limit, for example. Then there's notifications. So these are some of the notifications here. So there's a report. In the report, they want to know what the speed limit is, what the actual vehicle speed is, the vehicle speeding, the specific road type for that speed. They also wanted information about as I mentioned, the posted speed limit and the speed. So these arguments allow you to add that information down by doing that, it gave those down below here the speed and posted speed in this section right here. And then the last thing that I wanted to show was the presentation. So you have the ability to show that on the map or not. So if you didn't want it to actually show on the map, you could just click this, and this disables it from showing on the map. What this is doing here is it's automatically closing once the event has stopped. It's still historical data that you can get to, but it's not staying permanent on the map. Otherwise, if you had it closed manually, someone would have to go in and actually close that event manually. Most cases, customers want it to close automatically and just go back in time. This color code is associated with what you see in that little bar at the bottom. So you can change that color to whatever color you want. So as you grow and add more events, you may, again, change your color so you can quickly see where those different events are. You can use some of the default icons for showing, or you can create a custom icon as well. So you can put in your own icons in here for the event, or use some of the defaults. And then this is setting it up so that it shows the label here. So we want to show the actual speed. You just choose what column it is, and then you can just decide whether that label is always displaying or just sometimes displaying, for example. So that's an existing event rule. The two reports that I showed in the PowerPoint were what I did yesterday. One was, let's see, it was time in BOC, and then the other one was leaving the BOC. So this one is set to time in BOC. It's only related to traffic vehicles, so only the traffic group wanted to be able to see this. So here's that expression. It's shop area inside, so this is time inside. So this is set to inside because they want to know the amount of time the vehicles are spending in the shop area. But they don't want it to show on the map, and they don't want to notify. But basically, they just want reports for this. So that's an example of if you just want to geofence sort of report where you want to track the time inside. It's real straightforward on how that goes. The flip of that is leaving the area. So again, it's the same vehicles. The difference is you just choose outside instead of inside here. And that way you have sort of two different reports that you can work from. So, and just to give you an idea of the actual geofence here, so the BOC here, here's the BOC example. Turn on my satellite. So you quickly create a geofence boundary. The tag here is called shop area, so that's what we were seeing when we create that. So, so I'll just sort of walk through the process now of how to do that. So come up here, go event rule. We go add event rule here, and new geofence. So we'll do that. Use, for example, we could pick this vehicle type here. So again, you pick whichever types of vehicles it may be associated with. You can set it up on a schedule. So again, you can choose not to show on Saturdays, for example. And then I just choose the geofence expression here, and I choose my boundary. So let's say it's choose that one. And then since this is pretty much describes what I'm doing here, at this one I would use the inside. So this would be that specific geofence boundary. I could do a delay or immediate. I'll just leave it as immediate here. I can set up a notification. So to set up an email notification, for example, I would pick my group that I want to receive the email. So it could be either a group of people or individuals. And then I can choose the sort of information that I want to display when they receive the email. So a lot of times it might be the vehicle name, so it'll automatically put the vehicle name in the subject line, and then we could say, I don't know, left PUD or whatever you want to sort of have as the main subject there. So it'd be whatever that vehicle name is, left POD in their subject line. You can do some more advanced things. You can have links into the map. You can have a variety. So you could keep adding on to these notifications and do more advanced options where you have additional information actually in the body of the email if you wanted to. And then I can decide, again, how I want that displayed here. So I could put color. I can choose custom icon here. So I could put an alert option here, for example. I can choose a label if I wanted to, but I'll go ahead and, so then that's essentially, that's creating that event rule. And now you have a new event rule in your system, which you can have reports and so forth. So here, and I'm going to go ahead and delete this. So I'm going to delete this event. But that's the idea of how to create the event. I mentioned a little bit earlier about the event rule report. So if we go to event rule report here, this gives me the flexibility of choosing which event rules that I want to deal with. So I could go unselect all, and then I want to know, for example, just actual speed here, and I could choose something else, such as in a geofence boundary, for example. Let me see here. Where's the let's see, where's that time in? Yeah, there, time in. So I could pick those two. I don't know if there's anything in there, but the idea here would be you could see if there's any speeding within an area, specific area, for example. And then you could choose which vehicles that you want to look at in this. So I could say, for example, street vehicles, and then I could decide whether I want to do this weekly, monthly. I could do a custom, so this could be quarterly or a 2-month period, for example. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to do speeding just to see if there's any speeding ones. Okay, so these are based on that event rule speeding. Here's some speeding violations. Notice these have little links to the map, so I can actually go from the report to the map to see where these speeding violations occurred, and then it would go to the map for that location. So that shows me the speeding location from the report. So you have the option of getting these in a report, or you can obviously go down below here in the events tab and see that information too. So I want to be sure to leave time for questions here. Are there questions about these event rules, alarms, and some of the associated reports that we can talk about here.
Well, you have to have admin rights, correct? I mean, I don't have admin rights on mine, so.
So yes, you do have to have obviously those things enabled for you to be able to do those. So if that is something that you need to have the access to, we can I can look at that if you want to be able to do that. So yes, there is permission set. All these things have permissions in terms of adding event rules or creating these, which we can enable for you if you should have those.
Okay. No, I don't. I'm fine.
Okay. So just for you, Mike, for example, I know with one of the things you can do with specifically street sweepers, you have events that are set up to know when the broom is up or down. So those are event rules that trigger based on broom up, broom down, and those are configurable too to based on how we have those inputs set up, right broom, left broom, and those are all again, go into those reports that you have that should identify, for example, miles swept and those sort of things. So, and we can connect to other onboard sensors, whether it be spreaders, plows, paint sprayers, other things, and those are all, again, those event rules define information that we can capture on what the vehicle is doing, and then get those into your reports as well as visually display those. So.
Okay.
All right. Anyone else have any questions? Got a few others join, but if not, I'll follow up with this PowerPoint and provide that to you. If you have any follow-up questions, here's my contact information. If your organization needs some specific training, this is sort of a monthly educational workshop that we're doing, different topics every month. So if there's something specific that you're interested in, feel free to shoot me an email or call me. We can do one that's of specific interest. But we will be having these typically every third Thursday of the month. And you can get on our website, there's a calendar of events where you can see all of the different, for each month, our educational workshop, which I should have put in here, with a link to that, but I can follow up with a link. But then you can actually sign up in advance for some of those workshops if you'd like. You can get to that calendar and see what is at least planned for the future. So, but if you have any other questions, shoot me an email or call me, and we can help you out if you have any specifics you're interested in. So, if not, thanks for your time, and look forward to future educational workshops with you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye-bye.